Maybe just tell me a bit about your background with the British Army. What did you do before you came to Canada?
I served in the British Army from June of '74 up until October of 1982. My initial service was with the 2nd Battalion Scots Guards. Then I transitioned into transportation. I was 3 Squadron Royal Corps of Transport, basically tank transporting out of Sennelager in Germany. Primarily, when I joined the British Army, it was sense of adventure. I wanted to get out. There was lots of stuff going on in the UK, Ireland, and a lot of bad things happening there. And I got my blood up, and I decided I'm going to join the military, and I'm going to take the fight to the other guy because I don't want it coming to Scotland. So, poof, joined the British Army and got all the adventure I could ever want. And sometimes I carry the scars to this day for I call it my sins. But overall, stationed in the UK for a couple of tours in Germany, a couple in Canada at Batis, and went to Central America, did jungle warfare training down there. So that, Buckingham Palace, Windsor Castle, the basics, that's about my whole tour in British Army. When I released from the British Army, I'd met my new wife. I'd actually met her in Calgary. I was up in Calgary in February '81 to go to a guy's wedding who'd come out from Germany with us. And that's how I met my wife, and then we decided we'd come back and live in Calgary after I got out of service. Poof, I'm in Calgary now, living the good life.
And you did a tour in Northern Ireland.
I did 2 tours in Northern Ireland. Did one, they were both winter tours, 76, 77, and 81, 82. First one was in Londonderry, second one was in Belfast. First one was infantry, second one I was actually driver, Royal Corps of Transport. And I was actually in Belfast when the South Atlantic War Games kicked off in early '82. So my platoon commander refused. I tried to get reassigned back to Scots Guards because my battalion was going to Falklands, and he's like, yeah, it's not happening. He says, we're already men down. He says, if I let you go, I'm even worse off. So I was like, okay. But they were both good tours. They were, for me, I'm a field soldier. I'm not a barracks guy. I can't handle in the rear with the gear stuff. I'm the guy who goes to the fields and feels like he's came home. Wherever we were deployed, didn't matter where it was. That's what soldiering was all about to me, and that was part of being in the military that I loved. Whether it was Germany in the field, Northern Ireland, Belize, Cambodia, with the Canadian forces. So that was my thing, going to the field. Belfast was not Belfast, Londonderry was an eye-opener. That was the first place I was ever shot at, so it's like, it was a new experience, and we were lucky. Nobody got hit that day. We all came home.
How did you come to be in the Canadian military?
After I came in Canada in the spring of '83, I was bored out of my skull working in Civvy Street. I was working at Amico Canada in their computer office. And I was reading the paper, and there was an ad for the Calgary Highlanders were recruiting in that spring. I just headed down to the armory in Calgary and got signed up. I was probably one of the fastest people that ever got signed up in CF history. I think it was like a couple of weeks when we were in. Yeah, probably that's about it.
And then how did you go from being an infantry Royal Corps transport to being a medic?
In about 1987, I'd been at the Amico since '82. They were in the process of merging with Dome Petroleum, and that wasn't for the lower echelon guys, the worker bees. That wasn't going to be a good experience. Everybody knew that. Everybody knew the first thing that was happening in '88 was layoffs, and I started looking around for other avenues, things I could do. But I was looking for something that would give me a sense of purpose, sense of adventure. And one of the things I'd actually looked at SAIT when I came to Canada in '83 was they had a paramedic program. I was interested in that kind of thing back then. Even when we were doing workup training in the British Army, I was interested in the medical stuff. But I didn't want to be a medic in the British Army. I wanted to be the guy with a gun, sort of thing. So I ended up going to SAIT, and I was doing my emergency medical technician program. And I thought, well, I'm going there sort of full time, but I'd like to get back into the military. So I ended up going down to the armory again, and I got talking to somebody, and they said, well, we got a medical unit. So I was like, okay. So that's how I ended up back in the CF again in '89. I joined the 14th Service Battalion, and that was where the original medical section was based out back in '89.
So I'm just a little confused. So you got in to be a Highlander. Were you a Highlander for a while?
Yeah, sorry. In '83, I became a Highlander, and then because of the Amico where I was working, they changed my shifts around in '84. And it was basically parade weekends were when I was working. So I ended up getting out in '84, and then I re-enrolled back in March of 1989. But I came straight into the medical side of the CF.
So you're the first guy I've talked to who's been to Cambodia. How did that mission come up? How did that opportunity come up?
I came to Cambodia via Winnipeg. Funnily enough, Colonel Moffat was, I felt he was a sort of mentor to me throughout my military career at the time. I'd always got on well with him, and he was really pumped for me to go to Winnipeg and go with 2PP in the spring to Bosnia. It was around about the 6th or the 7th of January '93, we shipped out to Winnipeg, and we got there on the Friday, and then the following Tuesday afternoon, we were having an all group, and the platoon sergeant for the med det came in, and he said they needed 2 medics to go back to Calgary because they'd been tasked for this Op Marquis deployment with the UN. And I happened to know what it was because I can't remember the name of the magazine, but it was one of those military newspapers that they sent out every month. And I'd actually read this, I think it was Christmas, the December edition, and it had the article about Op Marquis, so I knew what it was. And I always wanted to go to that part of the world, like Vietnam, Cambodia, Thailand. So I thought that would be a good way of getting over there and still fulfilling a function that I was keen to do. So they sent me back to Calgary, to the base, and ended up working with 1 Service Battalion / 92 Transportation Company is what our designation was going to be when we were in Cambodia.
So what did you think Cambodia was going to be? Well, actually, we just step up. What did you do at that time for workup training to prepare you for Cambodia?
Workup training. It was more a lack of workup training, in my personal opinion. You know, other people may have a different opinion, but because of my background coming from the British Army, I thought the workup training was kind of lame, because I sort of knew a little bit about the Vietnam War was sort of my teenage years. I'd sort of followed along in the news on what was happening, and there was the incursion into Cambodia, there was Khmer Rouge going on and stuff like that. So I knew there was stuff going on, but to me, service battalion didn't seem kind of interested in prepping the guys for possible hostilities. And that I talked to a couple of warrant officers from Strathconas who were going over at the same time, but they ended up working at headquarters, I think. And they were saying the same thing. It's like, you guys should be actually doing real army stuff instead of driving a truck somewhere. I mean, you already know how to drive trucks. You should be doing sort of infantry training. And he found out that I was ex-British Army and I'd been in Northern Ireland, and he said, they're going to use you for sure. He said, because you got all your experience, base defense, security forces, infantry stuff. And I said, well, that'll be great. I said, because otherwise I'm just going to be I ended up being the 2IC, one of the sections in B Troop, one service battalion, and then I got a new section commander when we rotated into Cambodia. But yeah, workup training there was lots of hurry up and wait going on there. There was a lot of wasted time. I thought you're going to a country where vast majority of the population don't speak English. The one saving grace is the French had been in there, so there was lots of French. But for people like me who only got the one language, it would have been nice in that 3-month time if we had had some kind of basic Cambodian language training. It was brought up, but it was like, well, we don't really have time for that. So, okay. So that was workup training. I just know I'm not sure if I'm giving you what you're asking for, or if I'm just waffling.
No, that's good. Yeah.
I watched Chris Tucker's, the one you sent.
Yeah.
I'll just like, yeah, go on, tell him, Chris. And it's exactly true what he said. Is that thing rolling again?
Yeah, it's rolling, but what is it that?
Well, when Chris was talking about Cyprus, and I was just like, yeah, that's exactly it. That was the mentality back then, because, no disrespect to the CAF or nothing, but they hadn't done anything in a long, long time. Cyprus, and they even stopped doing that. And that was the mentality of the people who were sort of running the show. Yeah, it's going to be like Cyprus, no big deal. It was like, okay, and the advanced party, the pre-advanced party, recce went out, senior NCOs and officers, and they came back, and I don't know where they went. I don't know if they went to Cambodia or if they just stopped off somewhere, but they came back and they said there's nothing on the ground. You got to take 6 months, 7 months of everything you think you can need. There's nothing there. And we got on the ground, and it was like, well, there's markets there, there's coffee shops, there's bars, there's restaurants. Hell, they've got a photography shop, 24 hours, poof, you got your pictures back. I'm like, wonder where these guys went, because it was all negative. There was nothing positive coming out of that initial recce, but we didn't know that until we got on the ground. So
while you're still in Canada, you're doing your workup training, such as it was. What's your expectation? What do you think you're going to see when you get there? What are you getting yourself into?
Well, I'm thinking of if you want to have a visual sort of thing, it would be the 6 o'clock news in the U.S. during the Vietnam War. Because I'm not expecting like dramatic stuff like that, but we're talking about the Khmer Rouge. They're still active. There's still stuff going on. The recce went early March. There's nothing going on, But there was a major incident with the Khmer Rouge in March of that year before we deployed. But there was no mention of anything like that. So, I mean, I'm going over there with the expectations that maybe not, there'll be some action. You know, you go over, you don't really want action, but at the same time you do. That's sort of maybe a contradiction in terms, but I think that's what I am. I'm an action junkie. I think that's why I transitioned so well from an infantryman into the medical role, because, you know, that was seat of your pants stuff when you go on some of these calls that you would go on in the medical field. But when we got to Cambodia, I'm thinking it wasn't going well. It wasn't what I expected. The way they were running the company was, I'm like, wow, really? You're just going to sit in the office all day and you're never going to leave camp for 7 months? And one of the other things I was thinking about is I was hoping to do medical work. And I talked to the medical officer, and he's like, we're having nothing to do with that. That's not our task. And I'm like, oh, okay, because the unit that was 92 Transport that we took over from, they were doing medical work and stuff like that. So I was like, well, you can't argue with the guy, right? He's the boss. He's going to move on. And I still managed to get out and do stuff when we were on taskings and stuff. There were, you know, I wanted to go out and work with the locals, help the local people, right? That's my thing. So I've always wanted to be a helper.
Can we just step back just a bit? You said that, you know, Vietnam was like your teenage years, right?
Yeah.
So what was it like when you stepped off the plane? What were your first impression? Did you go to Phnom Penh, or where did you fly into?
Well, it was a 3-day trip. We left Calgary, we went to Hawaii, then we went to Guam, then we went to Pattaya, and each one was a day. And then the French Air Force flew us into Phnom Penh the next morning, and then we got trucked into the camp, which was only about 10-15 minutes, if that, down the road from the airport. You know, it was everything I expected of that part of the world. You know, with the heat, the humidity, the people. Like, I never met people. Excuse me. I never met people like this before, and they were some of the nicest people you could ever meet. You know, I've been in shitholes, and I've met those people, and the Cambodians were nothing like that. Even the Vietnamese people that I met there, because there was there's supposed to be this Cambodian Vietnamese thing going on, but I think, to me, it was a government thing, because the locals were like best buddies, but the politicians are the ones that are causing all the grief. So when I got to the camp, I was like, okay, this is it. I think it was a converted warehouse. They just threw some beds in and left the previous unit to it, the guys that set up the camp. But overall, the camp layout was good, and I think we were the most popular camp in Cambodia, because we were the only camp that had a swimming pool. I believe it was sent over from Canada. It was one of those above ground pools, but nobody cared because it was a pool. But it was interesting. Like, I was just ready to go though. I just wanted to, like, okay, I'm here. Let's get on the ground and start doing stuff. And I think it was like 2 days, and we were working with it was one of those things where you go in and you get shown around the local area where everything is by the outgoing unit, and then we went on a task and we had to take a whole convoy of trucks up north and drop them off at one of the staging areas for later use in end of May for the electoral people that were going to be put into the provinces. So, yeah, it was kind of nice. It's always nice if you got somebody on the ground that knows what's going on, and they're giving you that knowledge. And with my experience doing handovers in the British Army as well, it sort of was a natural thing for me. Some of the guys were like, I don't know. But I just fell into it, and it was good. And about a week later, the guys started coming in, and I was the guy. Where are we going now? I think we're going north. Yeah, it was good. Worked out.
Guys are going, I don't know what, they're overwhelmed by it?
Yeah, they've came from Canada. Came from a first world, if you want to put it in like this. They came from the first world and they went to a third world country sort of thing. And, you know, all the perks that they were used to, they're not getting that now. They're having to actually work at doing stuff and getting stuff, and, you know, so they would be focused on silly little things as opposed to, maybe that guy's going to run you over with his truck. Maybe you should focus on that as opposed to, what time's lunch? That kind of stuff. It was I just call it Mickey Mouse syndrome, and leave it like that. Yeah, you tried to get the guys going and focused, but some of them just don't want to play the game.
And they're mostly service battalion, right? They're logistics?
No, we were a mixed bunch. Reg Force was, we had guys from service battalion. Primarily, because they were trucker unit. They knew what was going on, how to do things. We had Strathconas, Highlanders, engineers. We had infantry guys from out east. There was all a mixed bag, really. It was actually handy later on when things started to go wrong out in the field. It was actually handy having people like the infantry guys from out east, because you relate to, okay, this is what we need to do, let's do it. Whereas transport guy might not be as switched on as the infantry guys were. And although I wasn't an infantryman anymore, I always tell people I was born to be an infantryman, and I'll always be an infantryman right up until the day they put me in the box and I go back to where I came from.
So, is there a day that, or an incident that stands out in your memory? You said things going wrong. Is there something?
Yeah, there was actually, I mean, every day was an adventure, and it was a good adventure. But you know, obviously, I'm not going to name names and things like that. That would just be bad form. But there was actually two incidents that could have went the wrong way, and first one was just after the elections, near the end of May. It was actually a night just before we came back. There was an incident with one of the senior ranks in a local restaurant we'd all gone to for dinner, and there was an incident with one of them and the locals, and guys pulling a gun on us and stuff like that. And of course, we don't have any arms. They're back at the hotel, secure with one of the troops. And we managed to get out of there okay. One of the Cambodian guys wasn't too keen on anything happening either, so that was a plus for us. But it sort of went sideways later on when we got back to the hotel, and Buddy showed up with half a dozen guys and all the AKs they could carry, and they actually got a hold of 3 guys and secured them down in the gazebo. But the problem we were having is all the people who were supposed to be in charge were probably inebriated, shall we say, way past their comfort zone. And I mean, you were getting attitudes like, fuck it, who cares? beg your pardon? Fuck it, who cares? That's Canada out there. We care. So a lot of junior ranks were basically running that escapade. We managed to secure the zone and get guys out, stuff like that. So it all worked out in the end, nothing really bad, but it had the opportunity to go sideways on us because these guys down there, they got trigger fingers and they really want to hurt somebody, the locals that is. And they were Cambodian army guys.
But it sounds like the way you described it, they had taken 3 Canadians hostage, kidnapped?
Yeah, pretty much. What the guys that came back from the restaurant, and they brought some girls with them, and they gone down that side road to where the gazebo was. And when these guys showed up, they saw them down there, and they went down. Fortunately, the guys who were down there didn't have any weapons, or it would have been bad. But it was actually the guy on that end of the hotel. I was on the other end. He actually came up to me. He was from out east somewhere, and he was like, I think we got a problem. Like, why are you coming to me? I'm the corporal here. You're a corporal. Why are you coming to me? Well, the people in charge are drunk, and they don't care. Because that was their nightly habit, right? It's embarrassing to say, but like, you get your work done, and then didn't matter where you were, it was just start drinking at night. And that like, for some of us, that wasn't their thing. Other guys, that was their routine, and you can't stop them from. But being like that when there's something going on, it didn't leave a good taste in our mouths. We were bummed out about it, but we got the guys out, and everything worked out.
And you're in uniform at the time?
Yep.
You're not on leave, right? You're in.
Sorry? Oh no,
You got your weapons. You just had to secure them in the hotel.
Yeah, we weren't allowed to have our weapons out of the hotel. I mean, it was okay when we were in performing a duty, but you're going downtown to a restaurant. It's like 20 C7s, so like somebody's not going, so they get to secure the weapons in their room, and then we picked them up when we came back. There was a sour. There were some changes in the command structure after we got back because their policy, or the way they were talking, it was like, okay, what happened in the province stayed in the province. It was sort of like there was you had to do a river crossing. Whether you went north or whether you went south, there was always a river crossing, and you came back on to the main part where you would go back to the base, and it was like, okay, we'll have a briefing once everybody gets back, and it was basically like what happened there stays there. And the guys who were actually in the gazebo, they went insane, and the first thing they did when they got back was put in a report about what had happened up there, and I don't know where that went or what it is, but there was a command structure change within the platoon.
What was the second incident that you remember?
Yet again, we're in another province, and we've got the new command structure. And we're heading back. We're back at the ferry, and the UN seemed to have this thing where it's like, we're here, we're taking the ferry. Whereas the ferry guys are like first come, first served. But on this particular day, we were actually first people there at the ferry. The problem was there was normally 2 ferries. One of them was broken, so they only had one to use. And while we were waiting on the ferry coming, this Cambodian artillery unit showed up, and there was 500-600 of them. I don't know, I never counted them, but they had all the gear, and their boss was basically like, hey, how's it going? We're going across. And then the command structure went nuts and started having a pissing contest with the CO of the artillery unit. And I was like, okay, doddle, I'll walk around and talking to people. And I came around and he's pokey chesting this guy. And I'm like, well, that's not a good sign. And I started, the hair on the back of my neck was going all over the place. I had hair back in those days. Not so much now. But I got the vibration was going, and I just kicked in the infantry mode, and I started, watching my arcs and stuff, and I'm looking at this bunch of guys. They're moving over towards where he is. Most of them weren't armed, but the ones that were bothering me was there was a bunch of them set up on a hill, and they were setting up our RPGs, RPKs, they had their AKs, and they were all pointing at us. Before they weren't really doing anything. I'd seen them up there, but they were just like shooting the shit like army guys do all over the world. But as soon as pokey chest started, they started setting these. And I went to some of the NCOs, like section commanders and stuff like that, and I told them what was going on, and they were like, "I'll be okay." And I was like, "I'm not happy about this." And it just went downhill. Yet again, it could have escalated into something worse, because the only people that seemed to notice what was really cared what was going on was, yet again, me and a couple of the reserve guys, and we were more focused on. I mean, we saw what was going over there, but we were watching the guys on the hill to see what they were doing. Like there was one guy on the hill. You could tell he was the guy in charge, because he was wearing Malay and DPM camouflage, where everybody else was in the green, browny Cambodian stuff. And I watched him take a grenade out of his web gear, and he was playing with I'll just play with a pen, and then he's like, and I'm like, really, we're going to do this? I'm like, shit. And then he just put his grenade back and he walked away. And eventually, I don't know what happened with the pokey chesting thing, but eventually the artillery got on the ferry and they went across. And yet again, we all went across after them, and we got the briefing about what happened over there, stays over there, and as far as I know, it stayed over there with that one. I don't think anybody really gave a toss, other than me. And people say I'm pretty hyper vigilant when I'm in places like that, and maybe I am. I want to know what's going on around about me. People think I'm a nut job when I go to a restaurant, and it's like, yeah, I'll take that seat right away in the back. Just the way I've always been. But anyhow, we got away with that one. But the guy was the last. The guy in the camouflage. He was the last guy to get on the ferry, and the ferry was pulling away, and he was basically giving me the Cambodian finger when the boat was pulled away. And I thought, hey, you got balls, man. Like, who knows what would have happened? But it's stupid stuff like that. It's like, who cares? It's a damn ferry. Let him on the ferry. He's got more men than guns. Is there a fire we need to get back for? Is camp on fire? No. Let's just get on the ferry when it's good, and we'll go and we'll get back to base, and everybody will be safe.
Given just the situation, the country, the weather, whatever, how all the factors at play, how stressful was it working, like for you, working in Cambodia for those 6 months?
It wasn't, other than those sort of incidents that I've already talked about, it was like a big vacation trip for me, because I was doing what I wanted to do. I was in the field, I was working, I was doing my job. I was actually given responsibility. As a Section 2 IC, sometimes you wouldn't have got it in the transport unit, but I think they finally started taking into account that I did have some kind of experience. So they'd send me away on, you know, small taskings and, you know, give me a couple of guys and I'd be the man and woohoo. But overall, that was a great tour. When I deploy, my head switches to deployment mode, and I'm here, I'm doing my job, this is what I want 100%. I don't think about where I came from, I don't think about my wife, my ex-wife now, or my kids. No, I'm here, and the only thing I can focus on is if I've got troops that I'm responsible for, I look after my troops and getting the best experience I can out of Cambodia. You know, it was probably the best time ever to go to Cambodia, because, you know, I don't hear a lot of good things coming out of Cambodia these days. So, but I didn't expect much after the UN left. I expected it to go downhill fast, and I think from what I heard, it didn't do too well after the UN pulled out. Power struggles, probably.
Well, you made reference to when things started going downhill. Was it something more than those incidents that you described for me as part of your tour? Things.
Not really. I think it would encompass the incidents. I mean, there's personality conflicts. I mean, from day one at Service Battalion, there was the Reg Force reserve issues, but that wasn't 100%, you know. That was particular individuals that had issues. I mean, a lot of the guys I served with, Reg Force and reserve, they were all great guys, you know. But I don't know, it's like the command structure was just, like I say, I don't know where they went for the recce. So, like when we were on the ground, you never saw them. They very seldom left the camp. I think I saw the command structure once in the field, the whole tour, and that was a shock to everybody. Yeah, I think it was run about near the end of the election time. We were out doing our thing, and poof, they showed up one day, and it was like, what? Yeah. So it was, yeah, it was interesting.
I'm curious about, you talked about, it sounded like, if I understood correctly, like you wanted to do some sort of medical outreach work.
Yeah, well, I mean, whenever you read literature or maybe even you see movies about Vietnam and stuff like that, there's usually an element that go out to the villages, and they used to, I think they called them CAPs, combat aid patrols or something like that, and they go out and they do like medical screening and stuff like that in the local population. I mean, we had a hospital, I think we actually had 2 hospitals in Phnom Penh. One was run by the Germans, and I think the Indians had a hospital somewhere, but excuse me, but yeah, it was almost like they didn't want anybody going off the base to do other stuff. They just, you're here to do this and that's it. And that was a sort of bummer, because, like I say, that I was always hardcore UN, like, because we're doing good things, we're peacekeeping, and of course I don't know the full story of what goes on all over the world. And even when I was in the British Army, I was like, yeah, I'd love to go on the UN Cyprus tour. And that's what it was. That was the only one we had, actually, was Cyprus. And never ever got it. And I thought, here's a great chance for me to finally go on a UN tour. And I was very disillusioned with the whole administrative side of the UN, not the troops on the ground. Administratively, it was, yeah. I lost all respect for the UN right after, actually during the tour, you know. Because I used to go down to UN headquarters and I'd go, wow, didn't know they had uniforms in that size. Wow, must be a UN thing, special tent or something. You know, and these are the people, and they're horrible to the locals. They treat them very poorly, I thought. The ones that I saw, anyhow. I mean, I'm sure there was good UN administrators there, but the ones I saw, it was like, you know, it soured me on the UN.
When you looked at the people, what I mean, you mentioned how friendly they were. What kind of state were the people and were the buildings and the infrastructure?
Well, if I remember correctly, like when they went to Pol Pot and they went to that Year Zero thing, and they came into Phnom Penh and they just went, okay, everybody out, and they walked away and left everything. And I'd seen some pictures of the overgrown, the sort of mossy exteriors of buildings, and I was sort of expecting a lot of that when I got over there. But it was actually quite vibrant, because you hadn't been there since '91, I believe. So Phnom Penh was pretty vibrant, but there were lots of people living in shacks. There was one guy, civilian, he worked in the mess as a barman, and we had to pick him up, and then or whoever was on duty at the time, we'd pick them up, and then at the end of the shift we'd take them back into town to where they lived. And I was on duty one night, and we went back, and he invited, and he said, "You go down this street here." We went down this street, and all I can see is the sidewalk. There's a big 10, 12-foot wall, and then there's this wooden slum shack nailed together and leaning up against the wall on the sidewalk. And I said, "Okay, where do you live?" He says, "Oh, right there. That's it." And he invited us in, and we went in, and I'm like, whoa, I've got it pretty good in Canada. Hell, I had it pretty good in Scotland, and I thought I lived in a slum in Scotland. But yeah, but the people that's where they were used to. So to them, it was, maybe they were doing better than somebody else. There was a female barmaid, and she actually had an apartment. We refused to go anywhere near her place. We'd drop her off, but we didn't want her getting a bad reputation. We seen Canadians going into the building with her or whatever. So we never. She invited us up a couple of times. She actually made me the godfather of her daughter, funnily enough, which is kind of weird. Me being a monster and all, but I couldn't get enough of the people. There was language difficulties, but you could still communicate. How I communicate, I have no idea, because I don't speak any languages. I pick up one or two little words here, but I'm hopeless at languages. It was tough for me, but at the end of the day, I was still able to put my point across, and they understood what I was trying to do or trying to say, and I got the same back from them. So, yeah, great people. Couldn't do enough for us, really, the way I looked at it.
So ultimately, how satisfying for you personally was this tour?
Oh, very. I had an excellent tour. The only thing that brought me back to Canada was the fact that I had a wife and 2 kids. Otherwise, I wouldn't have came back. I was thinking about deserting because I didn't want to go back. And I wasn't the only one. There was other guys being offered jobs with the Cambodian military, and it was this like, it's a great offer, but you're pretty well screwed if you never go back. And in the end, you sort your priorities out, and for me, my priority was my family, and I ended up coming back. But that wasn't the first time I'd ever had those thoughts. I mean, when I deployed to Belize, I didn't even want to come back from there either. Didn't matter where I went. If I'm on deployment, I don't want to go home. I'm in Northern Ireland, I don't want to go home. I'm having a great time. It's just what it's all about. We're doing our job. But yeah, it was probably one of the most satisfying things I've ever done in my life.
You said, you're in deployment mode when you go overseas. At that time, how did you stay in touch with your family, and what kinds of stresses were there on the family?
Well, see, my wife at the time, she wouldn't communicate hardship. She would be like, her thing was, well, I don't want to bother you. So when I come back from deployment, I find out how hard it'd been for her, so that sort of messed me up. But communication in those days was snail mail. You got like maybe one phone call a week, maybe one every 2 weeks or something. And normally I saved phone calls till the mail came in, and then I would find out what's going on, and then I would call my ex-wife or my wife at the time, and we'd discuss what she's maybe mentioned in the letter. But the fact that she was having financial difficulties was never translated to me until I came back at the end of the tour, and I was pretty pissed off about that, because with the UN money, it was sitting and it went into like a post office account in Cambodia, and I'm sitting there with this money, and I brought it back at the end of the tour. But her and the kids are like macaroni diet and cabbage soup or something like that. And that was the hardest part for me, to come back and find out that's what had been going on. And I was pretty mad with her about it. That wasn't the first time she'd done that. She did that just before I got out of the British Army too. Same scenario. She's toughing it out in Canada, and it's like she never thinks to say, yeah, it's a bit tough here. Well, checks in the mail tomorrow, right? But that was just her, right? We're sort of Scottish. We're stubborn. She's Scottish too, by the way. But we're kind of proud and stubborn. We don't like asking for handouts and stuff. So we just suck it up and move on to the next issue.
So what's it? You sort of give me a bit of an answer there, like in terms of the hardship that they were going through. What was it like for you making that transition from Southeast Asia coming home? Like, how did you come home? Did you just go straight home from Cambodia?
We came back. Unlike going out there, the reason we had a 3-day trip that it was told to be explained to me was they'd got those new TriStars back in the early 90s, but they were all going to Bosnia. So we got this old VC-10, and it can only fly so far, and then it had to get a rest. So that's why it took us 3 days. When we came back, we actually flew Air Canada, if I remember right, out of Bangkok. And we got bussed into, I believe it was Harvey Barracks, to one of the hangars there, but I don't remember which one. And it was one of those, families all there waiting on you getting off the bus. But it never went anywhere. It was just like, get off the bus and yeah, we'll see you tomorrow. Okay. So then all the dependents are like, okay, we'll just go and get our dependent and we'll go home. And that was welcome back to Canada for me. And then it was a couple of days, we were with service battalion, but they wanted nothing to do with us when we got back, and we got back around about 25th of October, I believe it was, that year, and our contract was till the end of December. And by the end of October, I had a leave pass till the 31st of December, included like weekends, UN, annual leave, stuff like that. So basically, they turned us loose the end of October, and it sort of screwed me up a little bit, because about 2 weeks before we were due to go back, there was an accident outside the front gate, car and a motorcycle, and there's usually about 4 or 5 of them on this motorcycle, and the female that had the accident actually had had a traumatic amputation of her right, I believe it was her right foot. But we didn't have enough gloves. Go figure. Guy on the gate got nothing to do all day or all night, but he never checks first aid kit. So there was only one pair of gloves, and somebody was using them. So I just dived right in. I did my stuff, organized everything, got the girl all sent off to the hospital, stabilized. What I didn't realize at the time was I had a few small lacerations. They were open lacerations. And it was a big HIV AIDS thing going on back in those days. So I got checked initially and in country, and then I was told I had to go back after. Well, that was a nightmare in itself. You know, reservists going to the med centre on base and saying he's here for medical care. Like, are you working? No. There's the door. I was lucky that the day I was there and talking to I was trying to arrange an appointment, but I was lucky that the base surgeon was actually sitting in his office with the door open, and he came out and he was like, okay, what's your story? Told him the story. He's like, make an appointment for him to see everybody. I don't want to hear anything else about it. Because they had to have that 3-month follow-up for blood work, and they didn't want to give it to me. It all worked out in the end. Fortunately, I didn't have anything. But I didn't want to come back. I was having too much fun.
Any regrets, maybe not, that you didn't go with the 2nd Battalion to Medak Pocket and all that?
Well, the UMS sergeant wasn't my friend after Tuesday at that O group. It was unknown to me. Like the way they had the accommodation set up, I had one of the Reg Force medics, 2 PP medics. There was a 4-man room, and he was in our room. And there was 3 reserve medics trying out for positions. And when he came in looking for volunteers to go to Cambodia, I was like, pick me. I know where it is. I'm going. Because I'm thinking, go to Bosnia, it's snowing. I hate snow. You know, whereas I want to go somewhere where I've always wanted to go. So, but unknown to me, we were all trying out for X number of positions, and anybody that didn't get a position was getting sent home. But unknown to me, he'd penned in one name after the first day of scenario testing and stuff, and that was my name. It was actually inked in onto the board. And when I said I want to go, he gave me like the evil eye thing, and I'm like, what did I do? And then it wasn't until later on the med guys, I said, what's up with the sergeant? He said, he says, you were going, you were penned in. He said, he's pissed off with you now because you want to go to Cambodia instead. I was like, oh well. I said, if you don't know these things, you work on the information you got. You can't work on what you don't know. But I think overall, I had a friend who went with the battalion, and he was at the Medak Pocket, I was led to believe, and he was never right after that. I don't know what happened to him, lost contact with him. But to me, going there would have just have been, my thought process was, you go with 2nd Battalion, you end up in the Medak Pocket. It's just a follow-on to Northern Ireland for me. It's just another tour. It's just another bunch of guys trying to kill you. That's the way I look at it. Is, you know, just go do your job. Don't worry about dying because you got no control over it. You're going to die anyhow eventually. So I never worried about whether I was more worried about being incapacitated in some way, where I would need, like some of these guys that are coming back from Afghanistan. I mean, people call me a veteran. I go, I'm not a veteran. I say, you want to see a veteran? These guys coming back from Afghanistan, they're veterans. They're real veterans. I said, I did my stuff in the British Army, but it wasn't as mean and nasty as that Afghanistan stuff is. Same scenarios, the same bombings and stuff like that, but it's more intense over there.
My last question is just, how do you think that your time in Cambodia, or maybe your deployments in general, how do they change you as a person? How do they change you as a soldier?
Well, my first deployment with the British Army woke me right up. I mean, I was a kid. I was the Army guy. When I was the man in charge, when I was growing up, I was an Army cadet. You know, I was a staff sergeant. I was the guy in charge. But you never know until you go on that first deployment how you're going to be. And I'm pretty sure the word immature's got my name written right beside it when I went on that first. And my head wasn't in the game when we got, because I'm thinking, yeah, it's just another game, right? Nothing going on here, right up until the first bombing, the first issue at the checkpoints, when we first got ambushed that first time, or the first, near the beginning of 77, I think it was January, February. That changed my whole stupid idea to like turn me into a more serious, focused individual, and I left all that childish nature behind me, and I never recovered from that because I've never been the easygoing guy. You know, it's like I've never switched this off, and that's since '74. I've never switched my brain off. It's always going. It's always thinking 2 steps ahead. It's like, what's around the corner? What's that guy doing over there? Especially now that it's getting, I mean, yeah, we're living in Canada, but you see this crap going on in the States right now, and it's like, okay, is that going to come north? Are these refugees going to bring this stuff over here? You know, and that's, my brain just works on this kind of focus all the time. I'm just not right in the head sometimes, I think. That's probably why they call me Shrek, because I'm not like, I'm layered.
Another question that occurs to me is just, could you compare, when you think about your time with the British Army and then going overseas with the Canadian military, any major differences or similarities that way that strike you?
I think the biggest, the first thing I really noticed about the Canadian military was like, hey, you got officers that talk to you? Wow, how quaint. Because in the British Army and back in those days, it was like, we got officers. Have you seen them? They don't talk to you. They just, it's a class system in the UK. So I was used to that kind of non-interaction with, even your platoon commander. I was when I was an infantryman, I ended up being the platoon commander's radio guy, and that guy was a nut job. Like, he was crazy. But you take the job you've got. But when I came to Canada, it was brilliant. It's like we actually have conversations with officers and we share things, and that was the biggest thing for me. It's a big eye-opener because I didn't understand that there was actually. But then I should have known better. Canadians, right? Easy going, great country, great people, and it was just a wonderful experience to actually feel that I actually liked some of the officers. Whereas British Army, it's like, geez, find the one you like out the gang. Over here, it was like, find the one you don't like, which I think I was fortunate because I went to the Calgary Highlanders back in '83. And there was a great bunch of guys, you know, like Bruce Waterhouse and all those guys. Colonel Moffat, he was a Lieutenant Spawn back then. I mentioned that I was in transport, so they stuck me and Lieutenant Spawn together in the transport deck with the Highlanders. He was a nice guy. You know, all the officers, senior NCOs, they were great. It was a great experience for me to join the Canadians, and have a relaxed atmosphere instead of, oh God, here's this wooden top coming and we're going to be in trouble. So, yeah, that would be about the major difference. Would be the more relaxed, easygoing. I mean, I see it now, like with the guys who are operational, and you know, I'm like, we never had that. Even in the British Army, I can see it's a more relaxed atmosphere than what it used to be in the 70s, right? But I think Iraq and Afghanistan basically taught the British Army that they got to become a cohesive unit, not like us and them mentality like it used to be.
Is there anything I haven't asked you about, or anything you want to say to wrap things up? Any sort of final comment?
I'm not really sure. All I can say is I've never regretted any deployment I've ever gone on. I've always tried to get the best experience I could out of that deployment. Have I had bad situations in any of my deployments? Oh yeah, but the bad is usually outweighed more by the better experiences. I used to tell people, like, there was no finer experience than having some guy shooting at me, and they were like, rubber room. Get him in one of those special coats that zips up the back. But it was great. It was exhilarating, and I don't regret any military experience I've ever had. My big issue right now is the guys who, more for Suffield. I did a lot of EMS work down at Suffield, first responding, and went on a lot of local calls that didn't work out for the patient. And it's sort of, I actually did the military police guy that was killed in September of 2003 down at Suffield on the Terry Fox run. He got killed right behind me, and that's my penance every day, is that boy being dead, because I believe he died for me, because we got switched, and I argued the toss with an officer, and he just basically eventually overruled me, and he made the switch. Normally the ambulance would be at the back, and no matter where you are, you would see this ambulance because all the lights and stuff's going on. But he had like two little stupid lights in the back of his ghost car that nobody ever saw. The driver never even saw the car when he killed the guy. But so for my sins, I got him. So I live with that guy every day. I don't regret anything I've ever done except for that one incident. I let that boy down. That's my thing.
I'm assuming, like, I don't know the details. So he got hit by another vehicle, and you were working on him but couldn't save him? Is that what happened?
Well, what happened was they used to do the Terry Fox run from Medicine Hat up on the hill there at Rodeo Fort. We used to leave there, and then we'd head out on the highway and go back to the gym at Ralston at the base. And the guy who was killed, that was his first day on the job on his own. He'd been on Suffield about a week or something out of boot camp. And the truck driver told the RCMP guy that he dropped his pen, and he leaned over to pick his pen up, and of course the whole truck hit the guy. And then there was once it came to rest, I saw it in my rear view mirror because I could see flames shoot. I saw the truck swerving, and then it ended up on the north side of the highway. But I saw the flames coming out of the bottom of the truck. But I couldn't see the car the way the thing ended up. I didn't even know he'd hit the car. It wasn't until we drove back up and we got on the ground, and I was like, there's a car with a truck resting behind the front seats. Now his job was to pick stragglers up, so we didn't know if there was anybody underneath the truck, so we had to get a head count at the base. But the truck and the car were on fire. He was dead, but we fought real hard to get him out of there, because for me personally it was like, I'm not sending that boy's mother a closed coffin. I actually blew my shoulder that day, and that's my penance for failing that young man that day. And here we are, 13 years later almost, and I'm still paying for it, day by day.
And that sounds like that haunts you more than anything you did with the military.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I've got lots of dead bodies running around in my head, but that's. I bust my ass for everybody. They get 120%. I don't care who you are. I hate you. You're getting 120%. But that boy there, Like, didn't matter what, like, he was dead when we got there. But it's still, we had to fight, fought real hard to get him out of that car. And the worst thing about the whole thing is normally you finish a call, you go back to base, you fuel up, you restock, you go and finish your paperwork. Well, they wouldn't let us leave the scene that day. We were there from like 20 past 10 in the morning. I think it was about 12:30, 1:45 by the time they let us go. And that was the wrong thing to do with us, because all we're doing is sitting looking at the guy. Because we got him out of the car, he's on a stretcher now, and they got him covered. But the coroner wasn't coming, so nobody would move the body, and it was just like, well, you can't leave till the coroner comes. And I'm like, Medicine Hat's already on scene. They've taken over control of the scene. They got RCMP, everybody. Like, there's no reason for us to be here. But they kept us on scene, and that just compounded everything. Even with a debrief, stress debrief, and afterwards I came out from Medicine Hat. We did a stress debrief, and I'd done one before. They had a big accident years and years prior to that. There was, I think it was 7 people killed just at Ralston Suffield turnoff off the highway there. You probably see the crosses when you get on your way back. They're about three clicks west Suffield turnoff. There's about 4 of them, I think. But they did a stress debrief. I was fine after that one, and I said that to them because the young guys are sitting there and they're not talking, they're not saying nothing. And I just started talking, and I said, look, you need to talk about this. I said, that's why they're here. I said, I've done this before. I said, it was really helpful for me then. I said, and I think it's going to be helpful for me now. But in the end of the day, it wasn't. It never helped me, that debrief. Got me by for a couple of weeks, but after that, like, once he starts showing up here, game over.
When did you leave the Army, and why?
I was medically released. I got I got 3 skeletal injuries, and I got something wrong with the old ticker up here. And they told me I was going to get medically released around about 06. And then they finally got the paperwork all done. I was released on the 16th of September 2009. And I survived in Civvy Street for about 3 years before Veterans Affairs took me out of the workforce, put me on temporary category, temporary disability, and then about 2 years ago they put me on a permanent disability. I'm not allowed to work and stuff like that. So, but all the monsters are coming out now. They all want to play. That's why I go to Calgary every month. I go up there. I got a great therapist up there. And they've told me, Veterans Affairs want me to get a therapist down here. But as I say, unless you can convince that woman to move from Calgary to Medicine Hat, you know, it doesn't matter where I go, they're still going to pay for the session. I'm just out of pocket driving up there every month. But I'd rather go and have a good therapist and be out of pocket than sit down here with somebody that I used to lie to the therapist down here when I started going to see therapists after that young man was killed. It was about 6 months after that, I believe. My mind doesn't work as good as it used to. I used to have total recall on everything, but after he died, it's just, yeah, that's no. But they've got. I mean, it would be something like this, and I couldn't even talk to them. I'd just lie to them, you know, tell them how great life is, and really in my head's want to explode, and I want to go across the room and kill them because they're pissing me off. Of course, you can't do that. That would be bad for a therapist. That, yeah, day by day, right? Can't do anything else.
the the monsters you referred to, though, it sounds like it's a mix of your sort of civilian employment and maybe some of your military, or?
Well, most of them are all actually, because the fire hall at Suffield is first responders for Ralston, Suffield, and 50 kilometres around the base, sort of thing. And we used to be the base hospital supplied all the medical stuff for it. As far as I know, they still do. But so, I mean, we get calls to Ralston for military people, for civilians. We get down to Suffield, same deal. They have a motor vehicle accident on the highway. We get called for that. So that's where a lot of my monsters came from. That last 12 years in the service, I had a couple of civilian EMS gigs when I was living in Calgary at the time, or Strathmore. But most of my monsters are all related to working at the fire hall or the base hospital at Suffield.
So I'm just unclear. So were you on Class B at
Yep.
that time?
Yeah, I went down to Suffield in September of '97 for 9 months. They needed a guy, and then that rolled into another year. And then 12 years later, I was getting released from the military. So, I mean, it was great. I couldn't ask for better. You know, I'm working with the Canadians, I'm working with the British, I'm doing medical stuff, military and civilian. I mean, win-win. I had everything I ever wanted. And then the monsters started showing up after, you know. And I call them monsters because they're working in my head. They're not all monsters. They're just normal, everyday human beings who didn't make it. But I just call them monsters because it's easier to describe. It's easier to say I've got monsters in my head than it is to say, well, I've got all these nice dead people running around inside my head and chastising me because I didn't give them 130%. I only gave them 120 that day. And hey, the fact that you were dead when I got there, that's not my fault. But hey, whatever. What can you say? We have lovely conversations at night sometimes.
Thanks very much for today's conversation.
No, thanks for the opportunity. Hopefully you'll be able to use about 5 minutes of that.